is here. Member Elmer? No go. Member Walburn?
Here.
Okay. Guess it's up to you to present what we're doing now, right?
Well, the first item on the agenda is the consent agenda, the minutes from the May 3rd and April 6th meetings. And so, unless anybody has any changes, that can be approved by consent.
Well, having been at and read over the May 3rd minutes, I would make a motion to accept those as printed. The April 6, 2021 minutes, I was not on the committee at that time, so I can't say yay or nay one way or the other if they would be correct or not.
Okay.
I approve.
Been moved
I
and
was at both of them, so yeah.
been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. And that was just for the May 3rd meeting. Now we got to do the April 6th meeting, correct? Or does that have,
I think I heard you were approving both sets of minutes, but,
I'm good with it.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said I
Okay.
approve both. So.
okay.
Okay. Okay. I
Okay.
didn't want to jump the gun.
No, you're fine.
Yep, that's good.
Okay. We're ready to move on with the current, right?
With the public hearing item, correct.
Okay, we're here to consider an application by Donald and Elizabeth Wessel. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes.
Okay. For variance to Article 22, Section 23-302 to allow direct access parking stalls from the public street and not from driveway or drive aisle within parking lot at 133 North Cedar Street.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll give a presentation. The applicant is here to answer any questions and also give if they want to make any comments or a presentation following staff's presentation and any questions and answers you have for me. This is an application to consider a request for a variance to Article 22, Section 23-302 to allow direct access to parking stalls from the public street and not from a driveway or drive aisle within a parking lot. Approval of the variance will allow for construction of parking stalls to encroach on public street right-of-way to facilitate a new use of the building at 133 North Cedar Street. So this is a little unusual, not something you'd see every day as a board. If you look at how current conventional retail development is built, what you'll notice is there's typically a parking lot and there's a driveway approach that accesses the parking lot, and there are drive aisles within the parking lot, and you access each parking stall from that internal drive aisle. That is typically how it's done. That's how the zoning ordinance specifically requires it be done. That's for public safety reasons, because entering and exiting a parking stall that's directly off of the right-of-way can create a safety hazard. Now, there is a lot of that you'll see in older areas of town and specifically on Main Street in downtown. And downtown is kind of a different animal. Other areas, if any new development, you're probably not going to see that. There might be a few exceptions. I know that there's some of that at, I believe it's 10th and Main. There's a Subway at 10th and Main, kind of across from the
9th and
Advent
Main.
Health.
9th and Main.
9th and Main, correct. Thank you. I don't know how that happened, but
That was that way when KFC had it
okay,
years ago, because the original Kentucky Fried Chicken was located there.
okay,
And then Kentucky Fried Chicken built the building next door, which is now the Chinese restaurant. And then they moved out to where Freddy's is at now, and then they're no longer in town at all.
Yeah.
But that was done that way.
Late 1960s or early 70s.
It
Okay.
was, if not before my time, it was almost before my
Okay.
time.
So it's what we call probably a legal non-conforming condition. It predates regulations that would have prohibited it. There's some other areas where that parking has been permitted for various reasons. I don't know the background on all that.
Actually, right across the street from Subway to the Blue Sky Liquor is that way also.
Okay.
And Blue Sky Liquor hasn't been there that many years.
So if you see this area where this is located, you'll see some photos in a few minutes. Had a lot of conversation with the applicant and a prospective tenant of this building about those non-conforming conditions. I don't know exactly, I don't know the background on all of them. In some cases, they might have just been built without any city involvement or any specific approvals. We're in the position here that where there's a change in occupancy to the building. And I was asked specifically, are there any requirements if there's a change of use to the building? And so as the de facto zoning administrator, I responded by giving them this information, telling them what the requirements are and giving them some options. There's some options laid out, explained in the staff report. There is a staff report in your packet. So that's the nature of the request. So this is the aerial map. This shows you the location of the site. It's on the end of North Cedar. And it's surrounded by the co-op.
Okay.
This is,
Formerly the Stinson Plumbing Shop.
Okay.
It's where Ray
Okay.
Stinson operated out of. Well,
Okay.
Ray built the building in 82-ish?
I think it's in the 90s.
Was it in the 90s?
I think so.
Was that, okay.
Might have been in the early 90s.
Okay.
Oh, it was a while ago. Either way. So what the zoning map shows is that this is in an area of light industrial zoning. So the previous land use is permitted, the proposed land use, if that goes forward, that's permitted, it's permitted use. So this is a close-up of the site. The size of the parcel is 65 by 150. The parcels consists of, I believe it's 2.5, roughly 2.5 of the original city lots. The original city lots are 25 feet wide. And so these are the dimensions. It's pretty limited. When the building was built, it was built pretty close to the property line on the north property boundary and on the east property boundary and on the south property boundary. The zoning actually allows that. What is not going to be obvious to someone who's not looking at a map with parcel lines, so those white lines are the parcel lines. What's not obvious to someone that's not looking at a map like this is that a lot of that area in front of the building at the edges of the site is actually in the street right-of-way. So everything you see that's outside those white lines, and you see those white lines right there, those are the parcel lines. Everything out here is street right-of-way. And the street right-of-way is typically not fully improved. The edge of the roadway is here. The roadway is, I think that's a chip and seal street. Doesn't have curb, gutter, and sidewalk. So this is a view looking east from Pontiac Street, just west of the building. The building is on the right. As you can see, there are two overhead doors. There's a driveway and kind of a parking area, circulation area in front of those two doors. It's filled in with weeds a bit over time. Probably needs a little bit of refreshing with more surfacing. So this is a view looking from Pontiac and Cedar Streets, looking to the south. The co-op, they own and operate the land on the right side, which is the west side of the street, and in the background on the left side, which is the east side of the street. One thing you'll notice is that they do have parking directly off the street on the right side in front of their property. And I would say that some of that parking is probably in the right-of-way. Sometimes those encroach on the right-of-way. This is an area where the volume of traffic is pretty low. There are large trucks, but in terms of the number of trips, it's going to be pretty low. And that's a factor in this application. So this is a view looking east from Pontiac, and the east side of the property The building on the right, I believe, is an overhead door repair contractor, repair and installation contractor.
There's two overhead door companies in there.
Okay,
DNS Door is at the far end of it. Cal's Door Service has a bay rented in there. And it's stalled off, and those are the only two companies that I know of in there, but I know other people have got those stalls rented.
mm-hmm,
It's almost like a mini storage.
okay, oh, okay, I didn't know that, okay. So it's similar to the previous use of the subject property, which was a contractor shop and office. The overhead door company is kind of, they're more like a contractor.
Yeah.
It's not like a retail with a lot of retail
They
traffic.
do not retail out of there at all.
Yeah. So that has a lot to do with this. The owner wants to be able to lease the building to a tenant has more of a retail nature with potential retail traffic. So the traffic volume could be higher, and the nature of the customer is a little different as well. I don't know why it's doing that, but Austin's our.
Hey everyone, this is Jane Elmer. I apologize. I had a meeting that ran late. I've been on for the last few minutes. I've been listening in to the information being discussed. Just letting you know that I'm here.
Thank you. Okay. So BZA Commissioner Elmer is taking part. Okay, so this is the site plan that last time I talked with the applicant, this is the one they prefer. So this is showing right-angled parking off of the right-of-way. You can see a large part of those parking stalls extend into the right-of-way. So one thing that'll have to be, whether there was a variance required or not, construction in the right-of-way, use of the right-of-way, really requires approval of the city, because the city has control over the right-of-way. And so what's going to be required, if this is approved, is a right-of-way agreement, some kind of agreement with the city for use of the right-of-way and for construction in the right-of-way. One thing that the applicant did do, they gave us a preliminary set of plans that are not attached to this application and are not on any of these slides. And we asked them to make a few changes. One of the changes we asked them to make, which they did, is we asked them to add a walkway between the parking stalls and the building. So customers or anybody arriving by car is not forced to walk out in the street behind the traffic. So this is a walkway. What they're proposing is an asphalt surface, and that walkway would also be asphalt. One thing you see here too are their curb stops. So wheel restraints is another name for that, to keep the cars from encroaching on that walkway and getting too close to the building. So if I can explain how this would work. So someone wanting to go to this building, go to this place of business, they would pull in and they would drive on the street and pull into the space and then back out and leave. And with the 90-degree angle parking, it means that they could access this parking fairly easily from either if they were going eastbound or westbound. There's an ADA stall here. There's a door over. There's a door for a person right around here. And so the idea being that you'd park the car there. There would be this pedestrian aisle right here that would be directly in front of the door. And then these are overhead doors here for the other traffic. One thing that is not shown on this site plan, but I think is a factor for the owner and applicant, is there's a really large tree here that they don't want to have to remove that, and I don't think that we would want to try to force them to remove it or put them in a situation where they have to remove it. It's a large mature tree, it appears to be healthy. So we had a After receiving the application, we had a, what we call a development review committee meeting. So we have a development review committee consisting of staff. That includes our city engineer and our acting public works director. And the direction that the city engineer gave the applicant was to angle the parking in this manner, so it would be really accessible from eastbound traffic off of Pontiac to pull into these stalls. These stalls are about, I would say, 60-degree angled stalls. As shown here, this is not an angled stall. An angled stall doesn't work here very well because someone needs to be able to access these overhead doors with a vehicle. Let's see if I can. So in all other respects, the site plans are the same. It's just this one shows the angled stalls, and the other one shows the right angled stalls. I think that's the last slide. Just want to explain a few things in this application. So the zoning code, and this originates in Kansas statutes. The zoning code requires 5 findings that the Board of Zoning Appeals needs to make in order to approve a variance. They have to make all 5 findings. A variance is difficult to get in general because all of those 5 findings have to be made. And these are all explained in your staff report. Also, one thing I want to point out, there's a lot of questions that come up about the parking requirements. And there's a section in the staff report, it's on page 21 of your packet, that goes into detail about the parking requirements. And I'll be happy to answer questions about that. Basically, with the change of use, there is a net increase of parking required by 5 stalls. Wait a minute. Four stalls. So based on the analysis, based on the code, the off-street parking regulations, with the change of use, we would say they're required to have 4 additional parking stalls. What they're proposing here is 5. So if you look at page 22 of your packet, it goes into the findings. The first one is that the variance requested arises from conditions which are unique to the property in question, which are not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, which are not caused by actions of the property owners or applicant. So this is one of, in my experience, this is one of the most difficult findings to make in a variance application. And as staff has proposed the finding, this is not necessarily a unique situation. There are a lot of other sites that are small that have similar situations, but it is a bit unusual. I think it's unusual enough that it supports the finding that supports the variance. The position of the principal building on the lot and the nature of Pontiac Street provides for parking that extends into the street right of way, but in a potentially safe and effective manner. So the other thing that's a little unusual about this property is it's on a street that doesn't get a lot of traffic, and it doesn't go for a long way. It's a fairly short segment. It's probably 5 blocks, something like that. It just doesn't get a lot of traffic. So there are a lot of places where you wouldn't want this type of parking. In staff's recommendation and in the analysis, this is a relatively safe place for this type of parking. It can be done and not undermine the whole intent of the code or undermine safety. So I'm not going to go through every one of these findings. There are 5 of them. I just want to highlight the ones that I think are most relevant and most critical for you to understand. So, second finding, the grant of the variance will not be materially detrimental or adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. Basically, this is similar to what's around it. If anything, this is going to have more oversight because we're not sure about how the others happen. This one's going to have to go through a little bit more review than just what you're doing today. And if there is a retail type business here, the neighbors will benefit by there being more parking here rather than less. And so this will be good for the neighbors, that's staff's opinion. Okay, so another critical finding is hardship. And the finding is that the strict application of the provisions of the zoning regulations from which the variance is requested will constitute a necessary hardship upon the applicant. So I think the key to this finding is the statement that for the economic use of the property, the owner needs to have options for uses other than past uses, including the possibility of a change of use from a contractor's office and storage warehouse to motor vehicle repair business. It would be cost prohibitive to the applicant to install a required parking lot with a drive aisle on the west side of the building. The addition of a driveway approach, internal drive aisles, and parking is costly and will generate substantial stormwater runoff out of proportion to the number of parking stalls possible. So I think you have to be a little careful about justifying the variance and making the hardship finding based on economic reasons. But this is not a matter of making this a lot more profitable for the owner. This is a matter of just giving the owner some options and allowing for a wise use of the property. When you look at a parking lot is an expensive proposition. I'm not a contractor, but there's a kind of a high fixed cost to doing anything like this. And a lot of times you can have more economical parking lot if you have more land, because you can get more parking stalls off of a drive aisle. In this case, you have a driveway approach, drive aisle, drainage you have to deal with, all those things you have to deal with, and the most you're going to get out of it is several parking stalls. So it's kind of an excessive thing to have to do for the owner for such a small building. At the same time, it's not something that can just be discounted and not addressed through a variance, because the off-street parking regulations are pretty clear about this. So there are other findings. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those questions. Staff is recommending approval. There are 5 conditions of approval. And I think key to this is that this recommendation or the decision of the BZA and staff's estimation applies whether this is the right angle parking, as the applicant has said they prefer, or the angled parking. That doesn't really change the evaluation of the variance. That's going to be looked at further when our Public Works Department has to decide whether this is okay or not in the right of way. I encourage you to read the conditions of approval. I think another important one, though, which I'll highlight, is the owner will be required to submit plans for the proposed parking, and those plans are to be prepared by a qualified design professional subject to review by the City of Ottawa. And that'll have to be reviewed before they do any construction or demolition. There's this agreement that they would enter into. And again, some more detailed plans. This could change a little bit as a result of those plans. This has been a concern of the owner because of the expense of preparing plans. We have looked at ways to make this as less onerous as we can within reason. But construction in the right-of-way, the need to address things like drainage and circulation and that type of thing, it really calls for that other level of review that goes beyond this. But the plans that are in the packet are sufficient for you to make a decision based on our recommendation. And that concludes what I intend to present, but if you have any questions or comments.
I just got some comments to make. I'm very familiar with that site. Anything they do is going to be an improvement as far as what they're doing or proposing to do. is not gonna change anything that's been being done since the building was built. The volume of traffic in and out of the building may be the only thing. As far as the stormwater runoff, not gonna change it any. That's a hard gravel surface up against that building. It all runs to the edge of the street and down the street. I think there's a crown in that, if I remember correctly. Part of it runs to the east, part of it runs to the west.
So-
What they're proposing is not gonna have any effect on the stormwater runoff anyway, because there's enough slope there to that building. It doesn't soak in anyway. It's a hard gravel surface. It runs to the edge of the street anyway. I'd be all for it. Anything they do is an improvement.
Why did the engineer recommend angled parking over the right angle? Was there less encroachment on the city's, was that the reasoning?
I think that's part of it. There's not a lot of less encroachment. I think it's just an easier turning movement to make.
This is Commissioner Elmer, and that was one of my questions as to being in that area with the large trucks coming and going and turning and maneuvering through it. How much, which the city engineer would be addressing it by angling it in, how much of an issue would there be with having that additional parking that currently is not there? And what type of business that they would be putting in there would also dictate how many cars and vehicles are going to be actually utilizing that parking area. One of my questions, and it may be something that once it goes into, just because I'm not familiar with the process just yet on what we do, I'm fairly new to this position. Whenever we're looking at businesses utilizing the city's right of way as their property, which is what we're saying is we're going to extend essentially the boundary of their property by allowing them to park in the city's right of way. If there is city infrastructure, or if there is something that happens to that property, which that's what it would be at that time, because the business owner would be investing into concrete or whatever it is, asphalt, to create this parking lot area, who would be responsible for the maintenance and repair if there's damage done? And then also, if by chance there was someone who had gotten out of the car and there was an accident, whose financial responsibility would that be? And again, that may be something that is left to the city commission to be able to determine and improve on that. But from my experience being the property manager for the city of Kansas City, Missouri, we always had them have insurance in place. And who's responsible for that?
Mr. Chairman, I can try to answer that question.
Go for it, because I'm lost.
So I think that's really the purpose of the right-of-way agreement. It's going to spell all that out. Once this board makes a decision, that decision does not go to any other body to make specifically for the variance. As far as the right-of-way agreement, I anticipate that's going to be entirely between the acting public works director and city engineer and the owner and applicant. It's not going to go to the city commission, as far as I know. As far as liability, I believe that's when we have an agreement, that's going to be reviewed by the city attorney. So I don't know the specific answer to that question, but that all of those things are considered. One thing I will make a comment about this. My understanding is that because these parking stalls are going to be in the right-of-way, that the owner does not have the exclusive use of the parking stalls. A member of the public could use them. I'm not sure if the owner could keep a member of the public from using them. I don't think there's a high likelihood of that happening, because there's just not that much parking demand in this area for other uses, and they have their own parking. So I don't think there's going to be general public use of these stalls. But I believe the agreement will spell out whether or not the general public is allowed to use the stalls. The agreement will also address the issues of maintenance and that type of thing.
Thank you. That gives a better understanding for me there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys have any comments or concerns you'd like to make? Right, I guess at this point in time, we're ready to vote on it, aren't we?
We need motions.
I guess we need a motion. Oh, okay.
I just think with the angled parking, when you rotate a car, you're gonna stick the back of it further out in the road than you would parking straight in.
Yeah, and quite honestly, the angle parking versus the straight-in parking, from what I see going down Main Street every day, it ain't gonna make any difference. I can't tell you how many times a day I see somebody make a U-turn and flip into the angle parking on Main Street. So, and with that amount of traffic that's not there, I don't see any issue with the straight-in parking.
Okay.
And as far as, and I don't know, I don't want to overstep our bounds here, but as far as what they're wanting to build there, personally, I don't see the need for to even have a licensed engineer draw that up. What they're wanting to build is not rocket science. It's not a rocket ship. It's very simple, very cut and dried, as long as the elevation leaving the building is correct and it matches the street elevation, so there's not a lip sticking up for a snowplow to hit. I build it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I have. I took the transit out there from about the center of the building. Okay, I don't know what side. To the east, there's about a 7.5 on the parking lot, about 7.5 inch drop, and about 4 this way. It's already spanned out in that distance. It's already coned, what I'm saying.
Yeah, like I said, I'm very familiar with that building, and anything you do there is an improvement to what's there, and you're really not changing that much, other than you're making a nice asphalt instead of gravel.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Calcott in the back, he probably ought to state his name and address just for the record, just for the hearing record.
John Calcott, 1750.
Okay, and you're gonna be the tenant, is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah, we own Main Street Auto, we're just trying to get off. We're having the same issue, like, how they're saying backing in here, but backing out of our shop, we back into Main Street. I mean, it's just as busy as any other place in town down there.
No, you're,
Back out into the streets.
you're Main Street Auto, that's the one
West side.
located, yeah, I know exactly what you're dealing with.
Back out between happy hours pretty hard, so.
Yeah. Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve staff findings as our own.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. You should be good to go.
So, well, we have to get an engineer, or we won't.
Well, I don't think we can make that call here. That was just me
Okay.
giving my opinion of it.
It'll be in the record, so
So,
that'll
like I
be
said-
shared, that'll be shared with,
they're not building a rocket ship
yeah.
there. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Do we need
Cut
to
and
make a
dried.
motion to approve the variance also?
Yeah, we need.
Yeah. So I'll make a motion to approve the variance to allow direct access to parking stalls from public street.
Second,
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We didn't hear anything either way from Mrs. Elmer.
No.
Jana, are you
Mrs. Elmer
there?
is here. She's here. She was just having some difficulty coming off mute, but it's an aye.
Okay, all right. I didn't want you to think we were ignoring you.
Oh, no, I'm perfectly fine. Thank you.
Okay. I guess we need a motion to adjourn, or
Well, we
do
have
other
another
business?
item on the agenda.
Okay,
Election of
But
officers.
this, the item on the agenda is the election of officers. We mentioned it at the last meeting, and I believe we sent out the bylaws. Did you all receive the bylaws? I have copies of them here if you want them. I don't know if that'll help.
I'm good.
Okay,
I'll take your word for it. I haven't had a chance to look at them, but
okay. Well, you just, what you're doing is electing a chairperson, a vice chairperson, and, yeah, that's really it. So you'd want to nominate a chairperson and nominate a vice chairperson. If you really don't feel comfortable doing it at this meeting, I don't want to force you into doing that, but I don't think we want to go too much further into the year without doing that. Because the bylaws, I think it states that annually you're to elect a chairperson, vice chairperson, and appoint a secretary. Now, the secretary's already, that's
Betsy.
Ms. Carlson over there.
she got drafted. She didn't get elected.
She didn't get much of a choice.
Voluntold.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable doing it?
I am. It's just whatever.
What about you two? For vice?
I'm good with him, yeah.
You're good with
Yeah.
Are you good? Are either one of you good for being the vice?
I would say I probably am not, because I think they're still looking for somebody.
I
Is that right?
believe that you agreed to stay on.
I did, but they
Okay.
had said that they were still looking.
I understand you agreed to stay on until a
Yes.
replacement could.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I
I-
understood too. So you
Yeah.
want to escape as soon as you can,
Well,
but
I told them, like, well, I can stay. They're like, well, go ahead and look again, so.
So, and Justin, how about you?
I'm fine with the vice, yeah.
Okay. Well, then I would move that we have Gary Harris be our chairperson and Justin Paddock be our vice chair for the rest of this year.
A second it.
all in
See how
favor?
fast that was?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Jana?
I also have a question.
Shoot.
Just a point of clarification for myself. I know that I was filling in a vacancy. I was not told the remaining term or if there was a term on the vacancy that's being filled. Can we get some clarification for me on that so that I know what expectations are?
The clarification, is it for your term?
Well, Danielle, I was, after Danielle had passed away, I agreed to be on the commission. And that was also whenever there was the transition of the director.
Okay.
And I don't have clear instructions or information about the purpose, so, or term. And I believe that there's some specific as to that there's a planning commissioner that's appointed to the zoning. But can I just get some information to clarify what it is that for my term?
Yes. Yeah, we can provide that. I think we'll just provide it outside the meeting. We can call you or send
Okay.
an email.
That's perfectly fine. You can just email it to me.
Okay. Do you understand the questions, Betsy?
Yes, I just assumed.
Yeah. Yep. I think that concludes all your business, unless you have any questions or anything.
There a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Second?
Second.
All
Second.
in favor?
Aye.